Hello, and I'm connecting here early with you to just say a big hello, and I can't wait for us to dive in real soon to get deep and juicy in transforming your financial life. So it's so great to see so many of you connecting already. I can see you joining in. Because what a better way to spend some time in this crazy time today, connecting, talking about money, our financial well-being, how do we ride this crazy time? So I'm just connecting in now, giving you a chance to connect in. So you should be hearing me by now. So let me know in the chat, type in your name, tell me where you're from. That's always so great. I love to know who I'm connecting with and where you're all from. And let me know whether you can hear me. You should be hearing me clearly. Jenny says, love your cozy journey. Isn't it gorgeous? It felt like a lovely color. And it is nice and cozy, so thank you. We got Olivia's from Trinidad and Tobago. So great to have you, Olive. Yeah, darling Olive. So cool. You know, isn't the internet and just the ability for us to be able to create communities of consciousness where we can have these clean conversations around really important, juicy topics is so important. I mean, it's important in normal times, whatever normal looks like. But in great times of transition, transformation, even more so. Wow, we've got Greece and France and UK. It's going so fast. We've got south of France. We've got Midlands. We've got Johannesburg. We've got Rhonda, also from Trinidad and Tobago. Yes, we've got London. We got Steve. We got Michelle. Yes. Oh, love you. Love you too, Sandy. We got Plettenberg Bay. We got Minnesota, Jennifer. So awesome. So it's early your time, but what a great way to start the day. So this is just so fantastic. And if you haven't yet, so we're going to be I'm going to be around here for about an hour, 90 minutes. I'm going to be answering your questions. First up, I'm just going to be sharing some of my thoughts, some of the things that have been coming to me, so many questions being asked. Make sure you get some water. Also get a pen and paper. You know, it's great to be able to take notes and get some ideas and just to capture where you're at. What are some of the things that resonate for you, the ahas to come in? So this is so cool. We got Dubai, more Johannesburg. So this is currently in England, but usually in Johannesburg. Wow. So people also all over. Some people, you know, stuck, not able to get back to their primary base. But how awesome. The Charlotte says, thank you for spending time with us and love you for all that you do. Well, thank you so much. And I just want to really upfront to say this is such a privilege for me to also be able to connect with all of you. I think when we can realize that none of us are meant to do this alone, you know, our whole journey called life, our journey called wealth, our journey of liberation, of freedom, of who we are, is a solo journey. It's a journey that only we can take. You know, we are the ones that have to take those steps. But the paradox is also a journey we can't take alone. And even in this time of isolation and separateness, this has been so key for me to really, you know, drop into this deeper and deeper and deeper. So thank you for all being here and connecting in. I know we've got a minute to go, so I want to start on time. For those who connected, I want to honor all of you joining in early. So Sylvia said, there's no sound. You should be hearing me by now. I think a lot of you are hearing me. Just double check in. Can you let me know that you are hearing me? Sound. Many of you saying no sound. Let's see what's going on. Sound issue. So let me turning it back on again. So let's see if there's a sound issue. Okay, many of you saying you can hear me. Fantastic. So if you can just say you can hear, sound is good, hearing me. Yay, loud and clear. Good, good, good. So welcome, welcome, welcome. This is so fabulous having so many of you connecting in. And I just really felt called for us to have this training, this session, but it's also an open space for us to just talk about money, talk about what's going on in your financial world, what's going on in the bigger financial world, in what is truly a once in a lifetime for most of us, let's hope, huge transition, a massive, massive, tumultuous experience going on that is affecting economic models, the way we work, the way we consume, the way we live, our health, the way we perceive what our values. These are massive, massive, massive shifting times. And so this is an opportunity where I said, let's connect and really understand what are the opportunities. How do we ride through these waves? Because these are huge, big waves we're experiencing. And it's not just a health crisis. It's not just a one of social structures and equality and what is going on between the polarization of economic worlds. It's not just a financial crisis. It really is impacting so many elements of the base of our hierarchy of food, shelter, opportunity, access. And its core, even just how we're living. And it is going to be having an impact for a while. So what are the things that we can do to not only survive it? What are the things to make sure that our core needs are protected, and what should we be thinking of? But also, what are the things you can be doing now to provide resilience, to provide foundations, and also when we emerge from this, because yes, we will. There will be a time when there is no back to normal, and in truth, there never is a static normal, but we are going to be merging into a very different world in many ways. What are the things we can do so we, all of us here, are one of the ones that actually thrive from this, that we have put in place the things that we need to, so we ride that next wave going up. So I just want to so honor you for being here and letting us have this conversation. So there's no big fancy PowerPoint. I do have lots of my points and notes, but I would like you to just take some notes on this for yourself. And if there's some ahas or takeaway, feel free to put them in the chat, write them down for yourself, because this is how we also remember and get those actions in. So I wanted to call this Transform Your Financial Life, because when we're in states of big transition, it can feel really hard. It can be difficult to see any newness or another life at the end of the tunnel. But transformation is always messy, difficult. There is pain because something has to die. Things are being had to let go in order for new life to come forward. And so right now I'm getting so many emails and messages from the amazing Wealth Chef community, but also from friends and colleagues and small enterprise foundations and entrepreneur organizations asking me to do just webinars and masterclass on financial resilience, where so many people are feeling extraordinarily desperate and despondent. They're feeling really out of control and uncertain. And it's especially this uncertainty that can really, really, really throw us off and can end up having a massive emotional impact, which can really impact our ability to make solid decisions. So many people sort of wondering whether they're ever going to be able to work again, whether they're going to earn again. We're seeing unprecedented levels of unemployment, and that is going to continue and increase. We're already at over 30 million unemployed in the US alone. That unemployment is going to be rippling through in your developed and emerging, both your developed and your emerging markets. We're going to see unprecedented levels of unemployment. So people are wondering what the hell is going on. And for many people, this can feel like there's no hope. And I'm saying, if you're going, oh, this is, a difficulty or a struggle, and I thought you were going to give us good news. I really, it's so important that we just drop into acknowledging where we are. Not even in the 2001 big crash, and then in 2008 with the credit crisis, where so many people were impacted and felt devastated and despondent. But this is a whole new level, because the uncertainty is impacting just even the way we view how the world operates. What is the economic system? How are the ways we're going to work? This is all on top of the fears around health and life itself. So this is why I so wanted us to be able to connect here today, so that I hopefully can support you a bit. Firstly, to really help ground ourselves emotionally. And now this is not about unicorns farming flowers, pretending nothing's going on, but really understanding what are some of the things we can do to just calm that limbic system down so we can actually make discerning decisions. Because when we're in fight or flight, lashing in or lashing out, in fear, that doesn't support us. It's also really about helping you get clarity on what's happening in your own financial world and the world around you, because this is so important. We've got to get clarity, because then we can start taking some of that control back, because so much of that anxiety and fear is a sense of being out of control. It's also about getting perspective on what may or may not be coming down the way, so that we have contingencies, so that we have plans. Because I'm seeing a lot of people also going, la, 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 isn't this sort of fun? Oh, we're having a little bit of a holiday and then, woohoo, lockdown's going to be lifted and back to the way we were. And this is dangerous thinking, because that isn't going to happen. Now, what that time frame is or isn't going to be like, it's impossible to know, but it's super important we are pragmatic and have some scenarios at play so that we can be resilient in our businesses, in our employment, in our family, in our money management. This is what gives us that agility and flexibility. Then looking at some financial steps you need to be taking right now to see you through this crisis, and action steps to be taking to set yourself up to really be able to respond to rapid recovery. That is going to happen, and there's amazing opportunities that are going to come down the way. And this is really the difference, that people that really thrive after big transitions and times is what are the things that you plant now that will stand you in stead for the time to come. And also what the new normal might look like and what you can expect for the rest of 2020 and 2021 in different areas. How to stretch out your money if you don't have a steady salary or paycheck, or maybe that's stopped. What are some of the options you can be doing? What you should be doing right now with the money that you have, and what everybody should not be doing right now. Plus, what you could be doing to take advantage of super low interest rates. We're going to almost zero. We're going to in real terms, negative interest rate periods of deflation, and also many stimulus offers that are being offered now. Obviously, that depends what country you're in, and I'm fully aware that there's many of you from countries here where you aren't getting those stimulus offers, but we can be answering those questions. And really important, I want to be covering all of the must-have documents that you need to have in place, which doctors are just saying are essential, and 95% of the population is missing. So how does that sound? Should we dive right in and get stuck into that? We've got Libya and Kenya and the Garden Route in Nairobi. And so few of you are saying you've got having sound troubles or video. Best is to go out, come back in. And Linda says, my favorite Ann Wilson phrase is unicorns farting flowers. So, it's love to think there's unicorns out there, but let's rather plan for the practicalities that there isn't a unicorn. It's just a donkey with a plunger on its head. And that way we're not heartbroken as well as broke. So let's start with the absolute truth. We cannot segment and separate out our money, our financial well-being, from the rest of the aspect of our lives. Money weaves through every element of who we are, how we live, food, shelter, sense of well-being, safety, security. And so to try and compartmentalize and go, well, that isn't important, and well, I'll deal with that later, or maybe it feels too overwhelming, then it's going to be a massive, massive issue, because this disassociation, disconnection from the money stuff causes more uncertainty, more fear, and actually boils up and will burst out in other real sort of money drama stuff. And it's really important for us to understand that money is really a magnetizer. It's an expander. It's a reflector of who we are or who we believe ourselves to be. And so this is a real important aspect, that right now we are being given the most extraordinary opportunity to get clean with money, to get clean with our identity around what does our financial situation and what does the story about our money say about who we are as an individual. And whilst money is a reflector, a magnetizer of, if we're going to naturally go to fear, or if we're going to go to scarcity, or we're going to be generous, or whatever that relationship is, it's also super important to know and really own right now that you are not your balance sheet. You are not your income statement. What money is flowing into your life now, that is not a reflection of your worthiness. Your self-worth is not your net worth. And so this is the very, very first fundamental step that we've been given an opportunity to look at and go, this is me, and this is the money stuff and the financial side. And the two have an impact on each other. But the story that's going in my financial world is not about me. It doesn't determine my worthiness, my success. And this is super important because maybe you're one of the millions of people now who are having to close their businesses. I'm going to be doing a session for the Entrepreneur Association, their accelerator group, starting up, and they shared with me that in their startup section of their organization, these entrepreneurs who in the entrepreneur organization is like a support network, a networking group, 60% of small business owners are having to close their businesses right now. And it's really easy in these times to go, okay, there's problems in the finance, this business is going to fail, in inverted commas, as a result of these external implications, and maybe as a result of a very thin balance sheet. Maybe there wasn't operational buffer in there wasn't a cash safety net. It's very easy to start going, I'm broken, I'm a failure, I did something wrong. And this is so important to keep you and your worthiness and who you are and your sense of self-esteem and respect separate from what's going on in the money side. One, this is super important so we don't slip into an oblivion of just self-loathing, shame, grief, but also so that we can make informed decisions and not also hold on to things that we think define us, our home, the car we drive, the clothes we wear. And so this is super important. There's money and then there's you. And they are two different things. And you are already worthy beyond measure. There is nothing you can do, have, own, house you can live in, car you could drive, things you could do, work you could have that determines your worthiness. So own that. Remind yourself that. If you have to tell yourself that 100 times a day, that's what you do. So right now, people's stuff is being triggered. And around the world, people are angry and afraid, fear and anger. And this is natural. There is a separation going on. There's a loss of freedom. Many people's liberties are being significantly restricted. They're being told what they can wear, when they can exercise, when they can go in, going out. There's other impacts happening of many people in isolation. I'm in my 9th week. I live on my own. Maybe that's why I'm also loving connecting with you. It's an extraordinary experience for many of us to feel this. And so for me, feeling that this isn't fair, this loss of agency. And so it's super important we also just sit with whatever is rising. People are fighting about money stuff. This is becoming more intense. Your families are spending more time than maybe they were ever used to. Like going, oh my God, is this the person I'm with? And many people are paralyzed by indecision. Some are in deep denial that things have to fundamentally change and believing, just, next week, maybe next level of lockdown or whatever's going to happen, things are going to be different. Then it will all be okay. So this denial is also super dangerous. People are asking questions about, should I be investing and stopping it? Should I be accessing any retirement savings I have? What am I going to do about income? So before we do anything else, we've already said step 1 is separate you from your money stuff and know that you will be okay. You will get through this. Life will go on. That's what it does. And we are so much more resilient, flexible, agile and creative and have such extraordinary potential and possibility than so many of us allow ourselves to believe. But it can only operate when we accept that truth and we put down the things that are preventing us from being agile, flexible, responsive. And so the very first thing we need to do is talk about the big E. Now, I'm not talking about the big economic picture. I'm talking about emotions. We're going to get to the economy later. But there's going to be many, many emotions rising in this time. And you'll know that if you've been following the Well Chef or anything I do, we've got to deal with the behavioral economics, the emotional aspects of our financial well-being, as well as the practical how-to steps. Because we are emotional beings that occasionally think. We're not thinking beings with the occasional emotion. And when we need to honor and really respect what is that emotional journey we're doing, then we can drop in it and know that we're safe in it. We can emerge through it. Trying to disassociate, disconnect, numb from it, dull from those emotions that many of us were taught are scary, that we're not safe with, is the most important thing. And I'm sure for many of you, huge amounts of emotions have coming up. I've been feeling massive waves of these, and I'm just grateful that I've done a lot of my own work. I have coaches and mentors to support me in this. I've got community. And I've also learned how to be safe with my fears, my grief, my anger. Because if you're not feeling afraid, if you're not feeling grief, if you're not feeling anger at some of the injustices that are experiencing, then you're disassociating and disconnecting from humanity. And part of us being wealthy, part of us living our fullest lives and being able to pitch up in the other areas of our lives is being able to know we're safe to feel those things, even when it feels like we might drop into absolute devastation and oblivion. It's about moving towards those things, finding a way through them and emerging. So financial devastation is happening all around us, and denying or pretending it isn't, or just dismissing it or disassociating from it, is super dangerous. Perhaps it's not impacting you directly now, but you don't have to look far to see maybe friends, colleagues, your community that it is affecting and impacting others. So, first thing is to let whatever you're feeling be absolutely true. Know that you're safe with that feeling, that you will not get stuck with it. But also note if you're wanting to disassociate. I love Netflix. I've binged on a whole bunch of series. I listen to audiobooks. But notice, are you distracting? Are you lashing in and out at yourself or others? If you're going into grief or loss or fear, are you telling yourself you shouldn't, that's weak? And just last week, I was connected with a dear friend of mine who's been building a business, an empowerment business it was a coffee shop. And I won't go into the long story, but they had been reported. They were trying to do deliveries and they'd had to be shut. The police had been called. And he was just in absolute devastation or grief. There was 4 more people whose jobs had been gone, no way they could sort of stay open. And what I could offer him was just to sit on the pavement with him and weep in grief. And I think sometimes we can feel helpless in this, but know that empathy, being able to be human and bring humanity is one of the greatest things we're being called to do right now, is to bring all of you to the party and let yourself be okay with that. To not quickly try to go to solutions or judgments or disassociations. But this is important. This sucks. This just sucks. That's what it is. So maybe we can all just go together. Type in the chat. This sucks. It can feel really shit. So that's okay. And then we can shift and move on. So once we can just sit with the isness of something and not need to make it wrong or different, that's when we can then start experiencing what is coming out. So yes, this absolutely sucks. And there's a liberation when we can just say what is. Not to get stuck in there, to not go into victim or blaming, but there's just an isness. And it's amazing how then we can start noticing, okay, what is happening? I'm loving all this sucks, and it does suck, and it's really tough. And so I just wanted to really start with all of us. Let's just feel that devastation. A lot is dying. People are dying, but ways of life are dying. Businesses are dying. Economic realities are dying. But with death comes birth. Right now, many people are thinking that the opposite of life is death. That's not true. The opposite of death is birth. And we need both birth and death in order for there to be life. And so when we can just grieve the ending and be with the suckiness of it. That is where we can find the vitality, where we can find the birth, and where we can truly be in life. And so your first most important step right now is what I call the dead reckoning. So step number one is getting really clear where each of us are. I love sailing, and I did my yacht masters a few years ago. And dead reckoning in sailing is where you calculate your position, especially when you're out at sea, when you're in these waves where you don't have fixed landmarks to go, oh, that's where I am. There's that lighthouse, or there's that mountain that I can see. And you use a process of taking various points to work out where the bleep am I? And dead reckoning is so important because you're using where have you been in the past, where you're going, to estimate where you are. And you've got to know where you are so that you can make plans going future. So when people want to jump in and we want to, find that next job, what's that next income source? How are we going to do this? But we haven't taken the time to just go, where the bleep are we? Because if you don't know where we are, we don't know where we're going to go. So step number one, use this time to do some deep, deep dead reckoning. Anchoring point. Now also in sailing, when we're looking at compasses and trying to get our compass reading, there's a great phrase that says, true virgins make dull company. Well, I don't know whether that is true or not. It's been many, many years since I was a virgin, and I don't think I'm terribly dull company, but hey. So what does that mean? What is our true north? Where are we really going? Who are we? And just like a compass, the reading on a compass is not the true north. That compass reading is impacted by a whole lot of variables that impact on it. And if we don't know that, we can end up heading off on the wrong direction. So we need to know where we are, but also what are those variables that impact our direction so we can make those adjustments. And just like a compass, it's impacted by an external feedback. So you get your compass reading, and then the next thing you get is deviations. Deviation can happen from what's happening on the yacht, from metallic impacts. Those are your immediate environment. What is distracting you? What is disconnecting you from your true north? Your north. Are those the people you're around? Is it the environment? Is it the emotional impact of isolation? What is happening that's throwing you off? Then the magnetic pull is huge. You've got a difference between magnetic north and true north. These are the things that will pull you away and deviate you. These can be the noise, the media, the voices of fear and panic of others. We have got so much noise going on, and it's so easy to get sucked into that and get us triggered to that. Now, I'm not saying go la, la, la and disconnect and disassociate, but be very discerning what you allow to come in. And who you talk to, what is the narrative that you are allowing to dominate in your environment that is going to be impacting your thoughts, your well-being, your emotions? What are also the variations, and which are the variations that are relevant or not? And so this is part of this reckoning, is saying, where am I now, and what are the things that are impacting me getting a true picture? So step one in dead reckoning is getting intimate with your money stuff. Yep, we're going to get into bed with money. You're going to be seeing exactly what's going on. And we've got to slow down and look. And it's very tempting that we want to hustle. We want to be busy. We want to get to the next, job, project. What can we do? But this is super, super important that we go slow and look. Look at what was happening in your money world before this came along. What was your money flow? And I want you to start at the back door. If you know me as well, you'll know I truly believe our wealthy life is created by the choices we make with how we spend our money. Where do we direct it? And this is super important to know. Where was the money going, and where is it going now? Because we can try and bring more money in, but if we're hemorrhaging, if we're bleeding, if we're not getting value, that backdoor, that is super important. And for those of you with businesses or solopreneurs, this is super important. You're doing this in your business now. Maybe you've neglected this part in the past. Use this time to really, really go and look at your overheads, the fixed costs. And so I want you to go back and look at least 6 months of your bank accounts. Look at your credit card statements. Yes, I'm wanting you to actually look at the stuff, even when it might feel really scary. Now, if you're in a country that you can have alcohol, if you need to get a glass of wine to do this, do that. If you're in a country where you can't get alcohol, well, good old water's going to have to do. Maybe just get a big slab of chocolate, but do whatever it is so that you can just look at what's been going on, because this is super important. This is money leadership. This is money management. You cannot ever create financial well-being, stability, wealth if you don't know how money is flowing in your life. So go through, print them out, could be better, and get a highlighter. And I want you to identify every expense, every fixed expense. What is every bill you pay? What are standing orders? What are debit orders? What are subscriptions you pay? What are ones that maybe only happen every quarter, every 6 months? If you use things like PayPal, go and look at standing orders. You can see recurring payments that come up, because it's those things that maybe only happen every 6 months can really capture you. See where your money has been going. And I want you to look at those fixed bills first. What are your utilities? Water, gas, power, fuel. What are rates, taxes? What are your rent, your mortgages, your insurances on cars, home, life insurances, medical insurances? What are the subscriptions to gym memberships? What are our general subscriptions to cable TV and different television sites? Go through and see what are all of those elements, because this is going to be super important. Which of these bills? So once you've got this whole look, you also can download it into a spreadsheet form. You can have fun learning a new skill, learn how to do a pivot table, but allocate these expenses also to different categories. What is food? What was play? What was fun? And now you're going to go through each of these bills and identify which are absolutely essential and which are non-essential. And this is really, really important, that there's no time like now. There's never before been a time where it's been more important to get really clear on the difference for needs versus wants. Now, many people go, but Anne, I need this and I need that. Now, I need a haircut. I mean, hello, I feel like I'm back in the 80s, but it's certainly not an essential. I can live without it. Now, get super clear on that. Get different color highlighters and really get radical. And those that are non-essential, I'm going to ask you to slash those bills. Get rid of them. Really drop down. Now, I'm asking irrespective of whether your current money flow, the inflow, we're going to come to your inflow. This is an opportunity where never before you need to lighten your load. Please know you can come back to adding this baggage in. But this is about dropping the loads and giving you agility and flexibility and resilience. And it's the most extraordinary, beautiful opportunity as well to get really clear on what is important in life. And there's a huge liberation of knowing that your needs are not that. Many things aren't needs. There's massive liberation in that. This is part of the freedom of understanding that most of these things are choices. They are wants. So get really clear on that. And then for those things that absolutely are needs, what are the options you have to have that need met in a different way? Let's just look at, television. Maybe you have a subscription to a cable television provider. Maybe you can go to Netflix or, YouTube channel if you've got your internet. What are different ways you can meet those entertainment needs? What are the different ways you can meet that? And now, even if you've got a cash safety net built up, even if you believe you're able to still maintain that same cost of living, pay all these bills over the next 9 months to 2 years, I want you to do this activity. Because 1, it's about really getting intimate with your money. 2, it's about claiming your sovereignty of knowing the difference between a need versus want. And 3 is getting yourself agile, because part of this is also freeing money up to be able to respond to opportunities, but it's also about giving you a bigger buffer. As I said, you can bring all this baggage back at a different state, but the liberation is knowing the choice of that you are not defined by having to spend money on these things. So that's step number one. Well, it's sub-step in the reckoning. So knowing where you are, where's the money going, and what is a need versus a want. Now, the second step is seeing what available cash you have on hand, and also understanding what is the availability of credit card limits and overdrafts. Now, many of you are going to go, what, Anne, are you telling us to look at the credit card? This is about just understanding your options. This is about getting all the ingredients out, putting it all on the counter. It's like your mystery box in MasterChef and saying, what have I got available? It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to use it, but it is knowing what is available. So what is your cash and what are the credit limits you have available to you that if you absolutely needed to, you could access those. Now, what I'm going to be asking you to do is for every single one of these bills and outflow you've got, is you're going to start lightening that load and getting rid of it. So you're going to start making calls. You're going to contact every single non-essential, and you're going to start negotiating how you can lighten that load. The very first thing you're going to do is contact them and ask them for a payment holiday, not a loan, not a reduction in interest. Ask for a 90-day window just to give you space. You wanted to buy time, buffer in this. And again, even if you've got income coming in, do this, because we are going to be in this for a period of time. So this is giving yourself buffer. So you contact each of those, and I'll come back to that. But looking at the cash of hand, don't be surprised for many, many people if you find that there actually isn't enough money coming in together with cash on hand to pay for all of these bills. And, that is now this is a super important time to not go into shame or blaming or I'm broken or I shouldn't have done this, because the reality is 60% of households in the US have got less than $400 saved. In the UK, the figure is similar, with around 55% of households have less than £600 saved. And in South Africa, less than 20% of households, that means 80% of households, cannot raise 10,000 Rand in the event of emergency in cash without having to borrow, go in debt. Then that was before this crisis happened. So, I'm telling you this not to feel bad, but it is a wake-up call for all of us to just be really real about where we are and what's going on. So no shame, no blame. Remember that they don't help at all. Shame, blame, guilt, and fear are the things that are going to prevent you from claiming your freedom and actually being present with your life. So let's get really clear about what you can't pay and what you can pay. We've already slashed those things that truly aren't necessary, that are other alternatives you can find. Now for those ones that you are necessary, let's stop that bleeding. Let's lighten that up. So the first thing is, putting a tourniquet on, slash what you don't need, but then for the rest, I said, pick up that phone. The truth will set you free. Go onto their websites. And first thing, tourniquet, we want to stop the bleeding. We just want to give your financial world a little bit of a break so that you can gather and recoup. So ask for that 90-day payment holiday. And just ask. Call them and say, fine. Just when you phone them and say, can you please, just start with it. Can you please help me? Can you please give me a 90-day deferral? Can you suspend payments for this period of time? Postpone. Say, I don't want a loan. I don't want side. What can you do? Can you stop interest on that? And that's the first thing you want to ask. Not a loan, but this payment, so you can just defer this. And many of them will. Some won't. And no, don't get pissed off or angry with that. But if you don't ask, and if you don't also ask from a place of just being centered, then you can't sort of shift. Okay. I just want to thanks Elena for promoting yourself, but let's make sure we don't do that. Hi, Sibs. It's great to have you on board. Please, can you just make sure we're not having people self-promoting and giving out phone numbers, etc. on this? And this is reality. And this is also important for me that I, protect you from kind of scammers in the side. So just if you're tempted to do that, please don't. We will delete you and remove you from this webinar, but I will be answering questions. So this is where we can also separate who we are and the story we have about what is going on from our financial well-being. When we're able to just say, what can we do? This is not a reflection of me, my worthiness. There's no shame in this. There's no blame in this, is really, really important. So as I said, many will, some won't. For those that won't, you then can go, well, what are my other options? So, even consider, if you're renting, consider contacting your landlord or the letting agent. Say, can I have a deferral of rent? It's not saying that you're not going to pay it. Maybe come up with some sort of alternative repayment. For your mortgage repayments, see if you can do the same. Debt repayments, negotiate new insurance premiums, raise your deductible, also called your excess. See what can you do to reduce all of those expenses. Now, please, and also, okay, so student loans, many and most governments have already, and institutions have already made provision, an extension provision for student loans. So if you're in a situation with that, please make sure you make use of those provisions. And even if you have money to pay off things like a student loan, rather don't. Rather put that money aside. We're going to come to what you should be doing with that money. Make the most of building up this buffer, because it's not just about a 1 month or a 2 month thing. Okay, so chatting with a friend, I was chatting with a friend on the phone earlier today, and he was talking about businesses. He's in private equity and discussing, looking at different, helping different business owners what to do now, and seeing many people making real short-term, knee-jerk decisions right now. And I just love this. He said, right now, it's not about making money. It's about providing a survival base. Right now, it's about surviving and stability and security and resilience. It's about what do you need to do to see yourself through this huge, big transition time. So it's not about, a quick hustle to get a little cash flow in. It's about really surviving. So this is super important. And this is not about being scarcity or fear-mongering. It's just being real. Bottom of Maslow's hierarchy. We've got to put that in place first. Now, if you're going to contact your landlord and ask for your rent holiday, I'm a landlord, and also be compassionate with them. So they are many of them are going to be relying on your income as well as their source. They are also going to have expenses. They're going to have rates and taxes and levies and insurances and all sorts of bills that they're also paying, also most should be mortgages. And so it is important to know that right now your landlord pretty much can't kick you out. But don't abuse this. I think one of the most important things that we're all doing is going, let's have compassion on the wider sense. Where can we bring humanity in? Where can we bring truth and honesty and request? And then this is, I think, how as a whole we can really transform and hopefully also emerge into this with a consciousness, a sort of collaborative wealth expansion side that is super, super important. So now you've got to go, okay, what do we do? Now, maybe you are one of the lucky ones. Well, I won't say lucky ones. It's just situationally that money is still coming in. You've got an income. Your job is okay. Your business is thriving. Many businesses are thriving. So if you're one of the lucky ones that still has money coming in, live like you've never lived before. So what does that mean? I'm not saying go and just spend and binge and go, woohoo, this is crazy. I'm saying live like you've never lived before. Get super conscious and aware and become an amazing custodian to the money that's coming in. Really see it as an extraordinary privilege that you have access to inflow and that there's amazing responsibility and accountability for you to really appreciate the value of every dollar, every pound, every euro, every rand, every cent that is coming your way, and honoring it for the security, the safety, and the potential that it brings to you, your family, and your community. So I'm really excited that this whole opportunity of really for us to get clear of what is wealthy for me, who am I truly, what is important, where's my money been going, and what choices have I been making with my spend? How much of that was unconscious, and how can I use this time to bring some exquisite consciousness around it and become a wealthy spender, meaning that I choose to spend money on the things that truly invigorate and bring life. first and foremost bring me stability and safety and security. And then going, here is custodianship. And we go from how can I get rid of the money that I've brought in fast and just consume versus really understanding the potential that that money brings, the value of it. And what does that mean? The actions that I take that can really last long. So really going, how do I keep as much of that money? And then how do I convert it into things that will keep working for me? So when you've got money coming in, this is why I'm saying, irrespective of your inflow, I want you to be lightening your outflow so that you can build up a cash safety net. You can start investing, you can build up your freedom pot, and you can have availability of cash to respond to extraordinary opportunities that are going to be coming along in the next 18 to 24 months. So get those payment holidays, irrespective of whether your inflow or outflow hasn't been affected, and especially if they are interest-free. And in this time with this, really dive in and notice what the slowing down has brought you. I'm noticing this deep essentialism. So I haven't been able to travel. I think this is the longest time that I've spent in one place, most of it in the last 10 years. I'm only able to get outside and walk for 2 hours a day. Otherwise, there's a lot of time for me to spend reading, connecting with my animals, and crocheting, and just time, letting the nervous system slow right down to go, what is important? Noticing this. And a real essentialism is happening for me, like really an exquisite noticing, savoring of really juicy elements that as I'm really getting that, how much the busyness can separate us from life. So notice for you, use this time, write a journal, catch what you're noticing is really bringing you life. I now give myself a good 20 minutes to chop up my fruit for my birds every morning. And then I watch them. I actually watch them instead of just being on to the next thing and not noticing. So what's super important in this whole reckoning is taking stock. Where are you? What's your inflow? What's your outflow of the whole money flow? And what is really important for you? Please know this situation that we're going to find ourselves in, and this difficulty in this transition as entire economies shift, in entire economic models change, is not going to change fast. Whilst some economies are starting to open, we're having a reduction in lockdown restrictions in many places, in the US and in UK, in Asia, even in Africa, some of that is going to start lifting. Please know that the economic situation is going to be an 18-month to 2-year recovery. And I just wanted to share hopefully you're seeing that. Yeah. So this is just a projection of the economic outlook and growth projections and insurance around the world, to basically say we can pretty much expect that for the rest of 2020, we are going to be seeing continued contraction in the economies around the world, both advanced or what are called developed economies and developing economies. We're going to see massive contraction, and with that contraction comes unemployment, extended implications of that. Many people with social networks not able to support them. We're seeing in huge economies like the US up to an estimated 6% contraction in GDP, in the gross domestic product. We're seeing in Europe enormous contractions of 8, 9, 7%. And so these are substantial and have massive implications just in terms of cash flow, liquidity, businesses' ability to operate, consumption, employment. In the developed world, that contraction is actually looking slightly less. I mean, the developing world is looking less than in the developed world. But remember, we're coming off what was already a pretty difficult time in 2019, where a lot of the developing world had already coming off markets. We had currency implications, risks going on there. We're looking at countries. So basically, South Africa, Mexico, and Latin America are looking at so Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, but also South America, looking at the two big emerging markets that are going to have some of the biggest contraction. And so, we've just got to be pragmatic and really aware of that. And where we've also got societies where we have large and over-bloated civil services, where people who just, disconnected from the reality of the economic side, we're going to have reduced tax bases. We can also be looking for potentially some social unrest coming with that. But look at the good news is pretty much looking at 2021 having a great surge coming back. So by the end of 2021, we're starting to see that uptake, and then from that, massive growth. Now, this has happened every single time, every single big drop, we end up coming back, whether this is from the Great Depressions, from every sort of cycle for the last 500 years. There were end of the Dutch Empire, the British Empire, the merging of different sides. This is typically a 2-year cycle. And so this is really important to know, that why I'm talking about lightening your load is so that you can ride on the top of these waves for another 18 months so that you don't get swamped in it. But we're now going to be talking about, well, what are the things you can do? So as we come into 2021 and really benefit from that rise through 2021, looking at changes in markets. So now the third aspect of reckoning is looking at those inflows. Now, maybe your current income there is still a job, but please be really practical. Let's get really real. I'm seeing many, many people sitting at home thinking this is some kind of paid holiday. And what this is also showing is many people who they really are. Do they add value? Are their mentality that this is my job description and I only do what's on that job description? Or are they actually going, how can I add massive value? I'm seeing people who are saying, you know what, let me just come and pack boxes. I know that I can't do this, but how can I help? These are the people who are going to have jobs, because please understand this. Businesses are also going to be looking at this opportunity to look at whole new ways of working. This is accelerating the advent of AI, different ways of working, mechanization even more. And so please just be savvy about thinking, how do I add value in my business, in my work, in my job? Also, super important, you're looking at ways to add competency. Use this time off to learn new skills. Yes, there's nothing wrong with Netflix and doing a little bit of, sitting around, but what else can you teach yourself? There's extraordinary, from YouTube, can you teach yourself how to do pivot tables and spreadsheets? How could you offer value? Really get clear with this. Those people with multiple skills who can be resilient, who can also work virtually and digitally, are going to be able to bounce back and have multiple income and flow. So also, as I've said, if you've got income, make sure you lighten your load and keeping it. But also, if there are opportunities to get bailout loans, to get bounce back loans, to get some kind of government support, do that. Do that. Now, we can have an entire webinar and discussion just on the implications of all of the printing of money, and we can answer that in the questions. But use what you can. So now I know that there's many countries where those aren't being offered. But for example, in the UK, you're getting extraordinary bailout loans. You're getting bounce back loans. There is actually huge reason for you to get these. They're coming at zero or almost no interest requirements. And this is not for you to consume. Please, I still stick with lighten your load. Just because you can pay those bills doesn't mean you should. You should be using this money to get assets, to create a whole new way of being. So just the final one on, if you need money now, what are your options doing? One, just get out there, find a way to add value, find anything. This is a really good time to get humbled. Let's get over our ego, do whatever needs to be done to bring revenue and income back. But many of you have been asking me, should you be accessing your retirement investments? Maybe that's your 401k, it's a SIP, it's a retirement annuity. Please, please, please know, this should be your absolute last resort. Do not access that. So maybe you're needing 300 Rand or $30,000 just to get you through, to pay some bills. It can be very tempting to say, let me go and take it out of that pot. please understand the first thing you're going to do is you're going to be hit with a big tax bill. And that tax bill is going to take a big slice of it. So you're also impacting your future financial well-being because you cannot get money back into that pot. You cannot get that benefit of that the tax protected environment. But please know this, and this is a write-a-downer. And it might seem like, and why are we talking about this? But your money inside your retirement investments, that's in your 401k, your IRA in the US, your RRSP in Canada, your SIP or your pension in the UK, your superannuation in Australia, your retirement annuities and your provident funds and your company pensions in South Africa. They are protected from insolvency and from bankruptcy. Now, I know there's a few caveats, but as an overall principle, your retirement funding is protected from bankruptcy and insolvency. So if you are in a situation where you're finding yourself right on a financial knife edge and you're not able to pay those bills and you can't pay back that car loan and whatever else is going on, to go and take money out of your retirement fund to try and pay those with you might still end up going bankrupt is just not going to serve you. If you are on that precipice, if you're close to that, or you think within the next 6 months you could need to have to deem yourself bankrupt, do that sooner rather than later and do not touch what's in your retirement funding. Because as soon as you've taken it out of that pot, it is available for your creditors, for those that you owe. So if you absolutely know that there's no chance of you going bankrupt and accessing this money, it will make you feel better and give you a buffer, that is fine. But please just be aware of that tax implication. So for me, do whatever you can to not touch that because we want to make sure that your future financial well-being is also really protected. So you've done the reckoning. You've seen what's coming in, what's going out, what is truly wealthy for you. You've separated your worthiness from your money stuff, and you're doing everything you can to lighten the load and keep as much money available to ride this tide. Next, as I said, is get really clear what you want. How are you spending your time? Use this opportunity. Step number 3 is build assets. So I said, really use this time to learn what assets are, learn about investing, learn about the stock market, investment property, low input businesses. How in your own life are you, one, making sure that what you already have is working better. So remember, part of this taking stock is also going, if you do have investments via a financial advisor, maybe it's in shitty TV dinner products, whatever, use this time to liberate them, reduce their costs, getting them working harder for you, but also say, how can you start creating new assets? Are there things you can be doing now in low input businesses? Are you a photographer, videographer? Are you a writer? Can you be putting stuff up to get residual income from royalty-based incomes? What are multiple streams of income that you can be getting in creating assets? Remember, as an asset is something where you do the work once and it gets paid over and over and over. How do you get ownership in businesses, shareholdings? So this is from the stock market, and this can be in private equity and public equity. Public, obviously, remember, I love the stock market as the first primary asset class because the easiest asset class to get investing in. Plus, there are so many tax benefits from it. So making sure you are planting orchards, evergreen orchards that are going to feed you forever, not short-term, quick little cash crops to see how you can quickly hustle some money. This is going to be the difference between people who really have long-term financial well-being versus those who just get through this but still end up in this hand-to-mouth way forever. So use this phase to go, am I being an asset lover? Am I creating and investing in assets? From that money I'm putting aside, from that money I'm keeping, and from my skills and energy. As I said, we're going into now what extremely low interest environments for the next few years. Take advantage of this. And so remember, I said, if you can take get access to money at very low costs, whether it is your bounce back loan, whether it is a low cost loan that you can negotiate, you could be using this money to create and build assets. If you can be investing them in assets that are going to be having a huge return and coming back, and then you pay back that loan, amazing. So please don't use these things just to consume. That's why when we change the way of being and we use this whole different way of being, that is how you are going to be the ones that thrive and not just survive through this. So that primary action is assets first. And are you planting real assets that are going to support you, not just this little hustle to see how you can get some money in? And it's really important that you're not going, oh, well, I'm just going to continue with some unconscious investing via my financial advisor into some crappy, high cost TV dinner products. This is a time to also get much closer with the assets you already have. Understand, what are the fees you're paying? How are they actually performing? Can you see what you actually invested in? And so use this time to take stock of your asset drawer as well and go, how do I get what I've already got working better? So get rid of those weeds. And remember, in the Wealth Chef book, if you haven't yet got a copy of the Wealth Chef, this is what you should be reading right now. Go back through it if you haven't read it. You can go to thewealthchefbook.com and you can order the Wealth Chef book from all online bookshops. If you're in South Africa, you can hit that as well. You can hit that link and you can order it directly from us. It's only in South Africa. We're not able to courier outside of the country at the moment. But also with the book, there is a 30-day money makeover that you get free with it. And what a great time for you to really take stock. But in this, there's a whole section called Expand Your Dough, which teaches you all about index trackers, why I love them, what they are, how to do this evaluation of what you already have, plus setting in place your investment plan. Because again, what are we trying to do? We're trying to plow the fields, get ready for the surgence coming up. So if you can get what you've already got working better, plus start learning and growing, this is going to make the huge difference. Now, it's also super important that in this portfolio and in this huge tumultuous time, none of us know for certain which industries are going to survive, which are going to thrive. So this is why I love index trackers, because index trackers are self-healing investments. An index tracker is where you invest in a specific market. That could be the US market, the UK market, the European market, the South African market, the Australian market. And you are not trying to choose what companies you buy in this bundled investment. All the index tracker does is the computer mirrors and matches what is happening on the market, and it puts it into that investment. And so if you own units in, let's say, the S&P 500, that's the Standard & Poor's 500 index tracker, you own the 500 biggest companies in the US. So now, let's say you're just investing regularly in the S&P 500 every month, you're buying your units of it. Over the next 18 months, some of the companies that were in that top 500 are going to drop off. Some are going to exist no more. Some are going to be, seriously diminished by this. Other companies are going to flourish. I mean, Amazon has just gone through the roof. The likes of Zoom, digital businesses, 5G. There are extraordinary businesses that are just, this time has just been extraordinary from them, but we don't have to guess, because they will rise up in the index and automatically end up in your basket. So in 18 months' time, when you still own the S&P 500, you will own the top 500 companies, whatever they are. And so this is one of the huge benefits of index tracking, is not trying to guess which they are and make that sort of that crazy assumption of trying to time the market. So you want to be invested in low-cost index trackers, meaning your money works for you, not the financial industry. You also want to be diversified geographically and by asset class. And so you do not want to restrict yourself to your home market. You want to be investing in developed worlds, emerging markets, different asset classes. There's going to be equity. You want commodities, gold, and other commodities. You want to have property And you can invest in all of these through your tax deferred and tax free mechanisms like your ISAs, your Roths, your 401ks, your tax free investment accounts. But you want to have the spread. You also want to have currency spread, because what is also happening right now is also the end of a lot of the fiat currencies and the dominance of the dollar. So you want to have a spread of currencies so that you have the most resilience in this time. So portfolio design is also super, super important. So many people say, and should I be investing right now? And I've seen people sitting on the sidelines, deer in the headlights, either stopping their regular investments, not wanting to start. So please, 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 if you already have a regular investment in place, I hope you haven't stopped it. I hope you're keeping going. And if you did somehow stop, please, please reinstate that. The most important things you can do in your investing is regular, consistent contributions towards a fixed portfolio that you design, and really getting the benefit of this. So please don't stop those investments and don't rob them. Please don't sell them. If you haven't started that, or if you've got out, again, get your Wealth Chef book, get your Expand Your Dough, and reinstate this. Remember, you could be starting a regular investment process from $50, from £25, from 300 Rand. It's the habitual and regular investing and what it impacts on your emotional well-being, on your way you perceive the world is super important. One of the most dangerous things is when people stop and get out the market out of fear, it's really hard to go back in. We've seen, I think it was towards the end of March, we had that huge big drop. For the first time in ages, the New York Stock Exchange was stopped trading. The S&P 500 dropped through the floor. And people were just like, oh my God, I'm going to leap out. One whole lot of people sold. Crazy stuff, because we've got to understand the market is an emotional thing. It doesn't represent the underlying value. But many people also stopped their regular contribution. Now, that is so dangerous because firstly, when the market is going down, it's a huge, big sale. And it's really important to understand when the market is down, we get more for our money. Of that index tracker, that S&P 500, the top 500 companies in the US, the top 500 companies in the UK, the biggest companies in China, around the world, where you can be owning slices of these amazing businesses that will still be there, that will still operate, and others will come in. Right now, there's an opportunity to get them on sale. And so when you step out of the market, what's happened? We are already almost back at where we were in before the big dip in March. But a very similar thing happened in 2008 when we had the big crunch there. Many people sold. So all they did was actually seal their loss instead of just riding it through. And many people stopped their regular investing. They went, oh, this is scary. And so what happened? They missed out on one of the biggest and longest bull market rebounds ever. That if you had been invested and stayed invested in 2008, just before this dip in March, you would have averaged a 14% per annum return on your money just by staying invested, even if you hadn't put anything in. Now, if you had invested in 2009 at the low where everybody was fearful and frightened, you would have more than doubled your money. It would be 100% return. Now, and this is what's so important. So when we go into fear and we get out of the market, what happens is people start seeing the market come up and then they go, oh, but I don't know how to get back. And oh, is it too late? Have I missed it? And so they keep staying on the outside. And this is why it's so important. We just stick with a regular investment plan. So we're not letting our emotions try to drive it. We don't try and time the market. So if you did stop, no shame, no blame. Reinstate, get back into that. You might want to reduce your contributions if you absolutely have to, but you want to keep that regular investment going. Utilizing index trackers and that dollar cost averaging, so you're getting the benefit of these units. And again, it's all in the Wealth Chef. So in the Wealth Chef, in the 5 recipes for wealth, it's how to manage that money, how to get intimate with it, how to squeeze that juice and really become a wealthy spender, understanding what you're going to do with consumer debt. Yeah, I haven't spoken about high cost consumer debt, but it is covered in that. Get on the phone calls, get demanding without getting belligerent, but just saying, hey, interest rates have gone down. I need a whole new arrangement. I want interest freezes. I want payment holidays. What can you do? Look at transferring that around. This is your time to claim back your power, claim back your agency, really get in touch with who you are, and you are not what is a reflection of your bank account, your balance sheet, any of those things. You are an extraordinary, sovereign, already worthy beyond measure individual. And this is such an amazing time to claim that back. And remember, we are emotional beings that do some thinking. And this is why it's so important we put frameworks in place. We put regular investing structures in place. We put systems in place to manage our money. So because when we accept that sometimes we're going to be triggered as hell, we might be in that grief, that anger inside, and we don't want that to spill over to our financial well-being. And then step number 4, and then I'm going to get your answers. Such a juicy time to get your questions. This is the final and most important step to talk about. Have your voice, and ensure that you have your voice at every stage. Freedom is by making sure that your wishes, your desires are communicated. And there is no more important time than when you don't have your voice. And right now, millions of people are in the most vulnerable position. We've had an extraordinary health crisis to bring to the fore the urgency of something that I've been preaching and pleading with all of you to have, is get in place your wealth documents. These are your fundamental things that you need in the event of death and disability and you not being able to communicate your needs. This is your will. These are your powers of attorney, also called your health directives and your financial directives. Can also be called a living will. These and also trusts. So these are 4, and it depends on your country, might be 5 primary documents that please, please, please use this time to get this part of your wealthy life in order. I was talking to a friend of mine who's in New York, and she was sharing with me that her aunt and uncle were, New York's been one of the big centers in the US, and he was feeling pretty ill, and it wasn't COVID, but he hesitated going to the doctor, which we're seeing many, many people do. We're seeing a huge health crisis happening because people don't want to go and either burden the health system or they're afraid to go. And he was getting iller and iller. And eventually they went into the doctor and they realized that actually he was in a pretty bad way. And very quickly he was put on a ventilator and some interventionist life support. And she was devastated. She said, but this is not what he would have wanted. I know that he didn't want to be on life support, that he didn't want to be ventilated. He didn't want to have these kind of interventions. But here's the problem. Her aunt had no say because he didn't have a living will. He didn't have a health directive, and neither did she, in place to actually be able to communicate his wishes. There is freedom when we are able to use our voice. Make sure that your voice is heard in every way. And I'm getting emotional here because I'm super grateful that when my mum died, she had a living will. And although she had been put onto interventions that we didn't want, the fact that we had a document for our siblings at one of the most difficult times, we could speak for her. And we had a legal document that the health system had to follow and the doctors had to follow. And doctors are just pleading with people to say right now, if there was ever a time when you want to make sure you've got your, what in the UK is called a health directive, it can be called an enduring power of attorney, it can be a living will. This is the thing that says, this is what I do or don't want in the event of a health crisis. Please, please, please get that in place. I also received another story where a young couple were due to get married. And 2 weeks before they were, he did die of COVID. And this was in Europe. And 2 weeks before their wedding, but they hadn't put in place a will. They hadn't put wills in place saying this was their intention for their marriage. And so they'd already got combined assets, plus he had put in place, he had life insurance and things in place, but she wasn't nominated as a beneficiary and there wasn't a will. So despite that tragedy and all of their plans, there was no legal standing for her. So please get a will in place. Get a financial directive in place, and that gives somebody else authority to sort out your financial stuff in the event that you can't. Get a health directive in place, sometimes also called a living will in different countries. And so these key documents gives you a voice, gives you your freedom at the most important time. You also want to consider getting a trust in countries where that is so in the US, absolutely you want to have a trust. It's very inexpensive. If you're US based, I love Suze Orman's Essential Document Pack, but elsewhere it doesn't have to be expensive. Get these things in place. So you might go, wow, and that's a bit heavy going, but this is the liberation. This is the freedom when we know that we ourselves, our kids are sorted because we've dealt with the tough topics. We've put in place what we need to be put in place. This is the liberation. This is the freedom because now we no longer need to worry about that. So get those things in place. And again, they're all covered here in the Wealth Chef. So there we go, a big, big session. And now I'm going to get to your cues, get A's to your cues, and let's see how we are going. Okay, so Sibs, it might be helpful if you can point out which questions we got where. And let me see, I think I can read, but let me put my specs on and get answering. Okay, so great. Elena says, in these extremely provocative times, I strongly suggest the study of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Absolutely. So there's some fantastic books. And this is also really getting to the foundational aspects of what is a wealthy life? How am I thinking? What are these elements? And this is about getting back to basics, the core of wealthy living. And, you know, what I'm teaching, none of it's new, but we're able to get it into a framework that really supports us. Okie dokie. Let's see. Let me just, there's so many questions here. Let me see. Where should I start? Okay. Boom, 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 boom. I'm going down. You know what? It might be. So I'm going to start with Sharon. What you might want to do is just retype a question in at the top because there's so many that's going to just help me be able to do that instead of scrolling back down. Sharon says, what do you think of debt relief orders, UK insolvency schemes? So Sharon, this can be really controversial, but I truly, truly believe that when we are really in a financial position where the implications of trying to climb out of that hole, the debt hole or whatever has happened, is almost impossible. It's going to be so devastating. It's far, far better for us to go, okay, what is the truth? What can we do? You know, on the show Save Well, Spend Better that did in the US, there were two couples where there was an individual woman that I recommended that she deem her business insolvent, and a couple where they also declare bankruptcy in the UK, because actually looking at the implication for them to try, no matter what they did, no matter how much money they got coming in, they were in such a difficult position. They wouldn't have been able to come out of this. Now, I do not say that lightly. I do not go, woohoo, whatever, you know, let's have no accountability or responsibility for where we've ended up. But it's also really important that we have self-compassion to go, let's see what the situation is and what are my options. And if declaring bankruptcy, going insolvent is a viable option, and that is what you can do that. There is no shame, there is no blame. And with it, also just take responsibility. Go, wow, how can I take this experience and completely use it to transform my life going forward? We've got many amazing wealth chefs in different programs, in Financial Freedom University, in Wealth Builders, who have gone through a bankruptcy. And it can, again, be one of these situations where it can bring us to our absolute knees. But if we use these opportunities for extraordinary learning, for extraordinary going, how do I take this and completely transform a new way of being? That, for me, is going to be far better for you, Sharon, than people going into shame or story or what does it say about me? And so they hold on to stuff that is going to be absolutely devastating for their life. Okay, so Marianne has said, Anne, can you talk about insurances? So insurances are a really, really big topic, but insurances are many people's one of their biggest fixed overheads and expenses coming in. So again, go into the Wealth Chef book under Protection Pate. There's a whole section on insurances. But let's really speak about one of the biggest insurances that many people have, which is life insurance. And many people have life insurances that they don't need. So please get clear. You only need life insurance if you have have financial dependence. If there are people, if you have no dependence, if there's nobody that is depending on your economic activity in order to sustain them, and I'm not talking about economic outpatient care for adult children that should be standing on their own feet. And it's not also, oh, well, if you die, there's a nice payout. Death is not meant to be some kind of bingo where people get some ka-ching lottery payment. Life is specifically there to cover a gap between assets you have that could be used to pay for and provide an income for dependents until they're no longer there. So if you've got no dependents, you don't need life insurance, get rid of it. If you do have dependents, get really clear on what that gap is. And you want to make damn sure you have term life insurance, not whole life insurance. Please, there's a huge industry that sells a lot of products based on fear. And you're far better off to self-insure for many of these gap covers than take these insurances. So look at life insurance, a big one. Second one are things like medical insurance. Again, what is the basic insurance you need? Understand that the aim of insurance is not some kind of luxury. It's not to give you a fluffy pillow or for you to get given a bonus once a year. Insurance is there to cover you in the real emergency. And so many people are overpaying insurances or paying for benefits that they don't need, not understanding what do you actually need in the event of a real crisis. Pay for that. And also contact your insurance brokers. Please understand, all insurance is a commodity. Don't get all loyal around this. Price around. Use this time to get extraordinary great deals. Just last week, I got on the phone and I got new quotes for my cars, my homes, my contents insurance. And you can look at the ways that you can reduce your premium. So one of the easiest ways to reduce your premiums is take out all the add-ons and rather take responsibility for looking after your cell phone or your computer, whatever it is, but also increase your excess. These are also called your deductibles in the US. So this is the amount that you're prepared to self-insure. Really important, because the more you can reduce your overheads, the more money that can stay in your life. So this is where you can really claim back. So great question. Go, every single one of you. I want you dialing your insurances and come back and post on the Wealth Share Facebook page or wherever else. Tell me how much you've saved, because that money can now be spent on going to assets. And this is ultimately the real insurance you want to be having, is building up these assets that are going to work for you over and over and over, no matter what is going on in the world. Okay, so Michelle says, what is my view on investing in new buy-to-let property at the moment? Risky rent-wise or good deals? Great question there, Michelle. So I think right now it's almost impossible to say what is going to be emerging in the real estate markets. Real estate is going to have a real big shift around the world. And so I think we're going to look at far more co-sharing. We're going to see, I think, far more like rent-to-rent professionals cohabiting in like communes, high-end professional communes. We're going to see a massive shift away from commercial. But even commercial, we know that it's going to be a different way of working. So there's going to be less need for commercial. We're going to see opportunities for conversions of commercial space. We're going to see different operating ways. I think it's early days to be able to say what is going to be available. I think we also haven't seen the impact. I think we're going to really see the great deals coming on the market in more about 18 months' time. So Michelle, what I would be doing right now and what I am doing is I'm just studying the market. I'm understanding where's demand. Listen, humans need places to live. And so real estate is always one of your asset classes you want to be investing in. But take your time. As I say, keep your powder dry. Do use this time for research. This is why I want you to be saving up and getting cash, looking at where can you get low cost money so that you're able to respond. In about 18 months time, those people who have cash in their portfolio, who have access to lower cost money, are going to be able to be snapping up amazing deals in real estate and in businesses, because there are going to be many great businesses available, but they're going to have real cash flow challenges. So a great question there. Okay, Sandy says, I'm 59 years old. Is this a good time to take my pension provident fund and invest it rather in ETFs? I don't need to feed off it yet. So Sandy, please do not take your pension and your provident out of your tax protected environment. You want to keep that money as long as you can in your retirement annuity, in your tax deferred environment. Because remember, so there's two primary investment vehicles that give you tax benefits. One is tax deferred. So that's retirement funding. That's your pension, your RA, your 401k, your superannuation. Where you put money in, you get a tax benefit now, but you're going to pay tax down the line. But as long as it's invested in that vehicle, it grows free of income tax and capital gains tax. And so, Sandy, what you do want to be doing, rather than taking that money out to feed off it, you want to be understanding, is it in the best environment? Now, you may very well have that retirement funding, that pension, that provident fund sitting in a high cost environment, in what I call the shitty TV dinner pre-packaged investments that are really good for the financial industry, but bad for you. So you want to go and look at what are your fees, what is it invested in, and you can actually transfer your pensions, your provident funds, your 401ks, to a self-managed or to an environment where you can invest in index trackers, but keeping it inside your pension mechanism. Really, really important. So you still keep those tax benefits going on and you keep it growing, and then you can feed off it in a structured way. Also, I think because you use the word provident fund, I'm going to make a guess, Sandy, that you are in South Africa. So in South Africa, it's also important to know that once from an RA, rather than taking money out, you want to rather convert your retirement annuities, or what are called living annuities, which give you a lot more flexibility about what you can invest in, and they're no longer restricted to Section 28, Reg 28 investments on that. So keep it in your tax protected, but get it working hard for you. Get it into index trackers and out of actively managed funds. Okay, June has said, if already retired, is it not important to keep a good amount in cash due to the fact that equities depend on time? So June, super important. You're starting to get to the concept of drawdown. So cash is always important. And really, you want to know that your financial needs for the next 3 years are in cash or almost cash equivalent investments. So you want to know, what is your guaranteed income that you might have, your guarantees or relative, but you might have some fixed income products like certificates of deposit, you might have structured notes, you might have pensions coming in that is fixed. Then you want to know, what is your variable amount that you need to be providing? Remember, lighten your load. And then you want to go absolutely for the next 3 years, what is cash or cash equivalent? So reducing the volatility. And then the rest of those assets you want growing. You want that in the highest performing asset classes so you can really benefit from this. Be careful that you don't convert too much of your portfolio to cash, because that is like digging up your amazing orchard and bottling all your peaches when in fact your trees could be producing peaches for the next 30 years. So it's this fine line between that. Okay. So Sarah says, any tips on business insurance? Again, so everything that I've been sharing here, I want for all of you business owners, I want you to spend some time and go and look at your fixed overheads. Look at what you can negotiate. What are different ways of working? When you reduce a fixed overhead cost in your business versus your direct costs. So direct costs typically are costs of doing a trade, bringing income in. But you've got a whole bunch of overheads that you have to pay irrespective of the revenue that's coming in. That is really important to get that overhead level of a business down. You want to get it lean. You want to get it agile. And those will be things like rentals. That will be car fleets. Those are your insurances. Go and negotiate those insurances. Understand, do you even know what insurances you have in your business? Do you have them? What are other options? Get on the line with those brokers. Absolutely price on that. Carmen, so good to see you, Carmen. So health insurance, is it also better to forego gap cover and rather self-insure? So Carmen, I am a big believer that the more I can self-insure, self-manage, the less vulnerable I have. Now there may be very, very specific situations. So gap cover is where you pay an additional premium to cover what is called the gap from your base insurance, providing a gap. I'm going, when I can consciously make a choice around where that money is spent, I will rather do that. So I go, what is that critical thing that if some crisis event happened, I want to make sure that I'm not in such a financial implication that either, it has a massive financial impact. I've got to sell assets. So I want to ensure for those crisis peaks, not for the small little peaks that go in between. So I personally prefer to cover my own gaps, cover my own assets. So when we can understand what is the role of insurance and understand that the financial industry loves to sell things on fear, they become one of these huge industries because they're bloody good at marketing. And so understand, maybe go back and look, how much have you needed that? What is the implication? If you provide and self-insure for that gap, and if you have a need to fill that gap in that price, and you've rather stocked up on your tax-free investment accounts, your ISA, you've bought asset with that. Now imagine if you then invested that money and that asset is now kicking over for you, and then that asset can cover your gap. That is really the end point. So what I'm really asking everyone is to become conscious, just become savvy, use some of this time to go, oh, okay, before I was always so busy, I was hustling, it was like, oh God, I didn't have time for this shit. Now you do. So dive in and use that. So Nadia says, is it more tax efficient to set up a company or a trust to start investing? That is a huge, huge question, Nadia. Generally, when you start investing, and especially in stock market and index trackers, you're going to be investing in your own name. So that is really important because your tax deferred and your tax-free allowances only of you as an individual, not as a company. There are certain situations where you can then invest under a company structure, but we're starting to get a bit more complex. But always start in your own name and be careful. Many people get stuck into trying to avoid tax and they forget to create wealth. So get investing, max out your personal allowances and what you can do, and then you can add on. Okay, Ruth has said, please explain what you meant by get a trust from a UK perspective, if I can. Okay, so specifically in the UK, Ruth, there is a thing called a living trust that happens that only gets triggered on death. So it's linked with your will and it's specifically relating to inheritance tax. So if you're in a relationship, if you're in a marriage, it can also be any kind of civil partnership. In your will, you want to be able to utilize fully your inheritance tax. And so there is a form of trust that triggers in the event of your or your partner's death that makes use of your inheritance tax allowance. Because typically a full partner would inherit and then the inheritance tax is wasted. So you might want to research that. I'm not a big proponent of trusts for asset protection or tax avoidance. I'm talking about trusts specifically in the event of death and from an inheritance tax and estate duty perspective, both in the US and the UK. In South Africa, there isn't the equivalent. Okay, so there's so many questions. This is so cool. We could be here all day, but let me see what I can cover. So remember, get the Wealth Chef book, go and we'll do the 30-day money makeover. Great. Steve says, do you actively deal on the stock market? So Steve, one of the things that's really important is understanding the difference between saving versus investing. I mean, trading versus investing. I don't trade. Trade is where you buy something with the intention of selling it and you're going to make your money from the difference between the two. So that is trading. Trading is a job. Trading is to get cash flow. Trading is buying a property to do it up, to flip it and sell it. There's nothing wrong with trading. And that is a cash generating strategy, but it's absolutely not investing. Investing is when you want to own and hold core assets that then can serve you for the rest of your life. They grow in capital value and income that you can then eat off and feed off. So I invest in the stock market, and 70% of my stock market asset class is invested in index trackers. Why? Because every bit of research has shown that they outperform actively managed funds and outperform active investing, trying to select individual companies and trying to time the market. Plus, From a regular, consistent investing strategy, investing in index trackers, these low-cost bundled investments, gives you the opportunity to get extraordinary diversification of asset classes and geographically and currencies in a single platform. Whereas if you're buying individual company shares, you need a much bigger portfolio to even start getting the equivalent diversification. So I said 70% of my stock market assets are in index trackers. The other 30% is I'm a bit of a geek. I do enjoy selecting individual companies. I do enjoy investing in them and invest directly in them. Now, my truth, actually, my index tracker portfolio consistently invested over the last 20 years. Yep, I've been in this for a while, over ups and down markets, outperforms my active investing. Yet I still do it because as humans, we love to think that we can, be clever. So at least I've got the humility to admit that, and I still invest in it. And some have done very well for me. I invested in Netflix. But a bit like gamblers, we tend to remember the ones that perform well and not the ones that went down. So for everybody, I say, let the base of your investment pyramid be boring. Let it be dull. Let it be this regular, consistent investing into a diversified portfolio of index trackers. And then if you really need to get some thrills from it, preferably get your thrills from bungee jumping or whatever else you want to do in life. But then, give yourself a small amount to invest directly if that's what you're wanting to do. Okie dokie. Sylvia said, where do I go to start investing in index trackers to start creating wealth? Sylvia, get yourself the Wealth Chef book. Go to the chapter called Expand Your Dough and go into detail there. Plus, with the book, you're going to get the 30-day money makeover. And in that, we also have a whole number of days of how to open your online broker. So Sylvia, that's going to completely depend what country you're in. But generally, what you're going to need is an online broker. So that's just the place where you can go and buy these index trackers. And again, I don't know what country you're in, but we explain how to open your online broker, how to select which index trackers you want, the simple portfolio, and that is going to be the way you do it. So Gillian says, I have an investment paying out on the 1st of June. Should I use it to pay off my credit cards and reduce the monthly amount I need from my debits, or invest it? At present, I'm earning about 10,000 less than I need for my debits. So Gillian, what I want you to do is go right to the beginning of this webinar. And I want you to first, before you even think about paying off those credit cards or your debits that are going off, I want you to reckon. I want you to go and take the long, hard look at everything that's going on and go, how can you lighten your load? Because one of the really important money rules, and if you haven't gone and read my 10 money rules on the Wealth Chef blog, go and do that, is once an asset, always an asset. So aim to keep your assets always reinvesting your investment returns, get them back into an asset. This is going to be a super important discipline. And I want you instead, Gillian, find another way to reduce those credit cards. Contact those credit card providers, negotiate down interest rates. It can feel uncomfortable, but what better time than a bloody pandemic for us to get over our shit, start asking questions, start claiming our voice, our agency in this, get right with our money stuff. And so, Gillian, I want you to first call all of them, ask for payment holiday, ask for lower interest rates, ask for, what can be written off. If you don't ask, you don't know. And use this as an experiment to see what it feels like to ask. Then how else could you do it? How else could you lighten your load? What can you get rid of? What's a need versus a want? You contact your insurances, get all of that done. And if you still have a gap, only then do you consider robbing your assets? Because this is the thing. I want to make sure that you all come out of this still with assets in place, getting that invested. There are amazing opportunities, Gillian, now. So there's my challenge to you. That is your absolute last resort. So I want you to do at least 10 actions before you're even considering using that money to pay off those debts. Okay, Michelle has said, with interest rates decreasing, is it a good time to take money out of money markets and invest in index trackers, or is it better to keep it in cash during uncertain times? So where you have, Michelle, if you've already got a cash safety net and you're going to have access to fill any income gaps you might have over the next 12 to 18 months, if you've got that cash safety net in place, any additional cash that you have, I want you to start getting investing. Please understand this. In this uncertain times and in this volatility, there are amazing opportunities. And when you put in place a diversified portfolio of index trackers, utilizing this cost averaging mechanism, you're not trying to time the market, and you're building your muscle and your resilience, and you're confident in this, it's far, far better for you to get that money working. Just money sitting in cash beyond that is there for your safety and protection and to cover this gap during this time, which many of you are going to have, is just going to be going backwards. Super low interest environments, that money is going to do nothing for you. In fact, it's going to depreciate. So this is why you want to have a proper plan. You want to have an emergency fund. You want to have that cash safety net. You want to lighten that load so you're not having to fill up a gap too much. You're wanting to find other income sources, and then be an asset creator. Get that money working for you. So Carol said, pay off credit cards and invest in assets. So without knowing what your big financial picture is, Carol, first thing there's a step before all of you. I want you to lighten your load, get rid of your wants and look at your needs. See this as an extraordinary, adventurous time. Imagine if we could all just go, how does it feel for the next 12 months to really use what I already have? How can I consume less? How can I liberate? How else can I pay off that credit card? What could you sell? What else could you do rather than robbing assets or using cash to pay that? So absolutely, I'm loving the fact that you want to get rid of consumer debt, get rid of those credit cards. Hell yeah. But first contact them, get those interest rates down, do everything else there, add any spare, build assets. Cool. So Christine says, what to do with pension payout from company in liquidation in South Africa? Inflow down to less than 20% for family of 5. Yeah. Christine, tough situations. And obviously I don't know the specifics of the situation. And this is what we've got to prepare for. We are seeing we're going to have massive implications come. We're seeing printing of money. We're seeing bailouts happening. We're having balance of payments being out of situation. We've got entire countries just increasing their debt. We are going to see more and more people, companies, pensions, sites not being able to pay out on what is due because of liquidity and cash, and quite frankly, mismanagement financially. We should be pissed off. We should grieve it, but we can't let it just destroy us and not take action. And this is why it's so important. We've got to take accountability for our own financial well-being. No government, no partner, no child is there for us. We have to do it for ourselves. So, Christine, I don't know the details, but with the company in liquidation, that is going to be their situation. They're not going to have stuff on balance sheet. So grieve, be pissed off, be frustrated, let that be true, and quickly pivot. What is going to be other ways that income can come in? How can we start adding value in different areas? What are other options? And this is going to be super important, because if we get stuck in our outrage or our shouldn't be so or it isn't fair, that is where we lose precious time. So I'm not saying negate those things. Remember, I started off right now. Let's feel the feels and do what we need to do, because when we get stuck in that, that's where the longer time we spent in that takes us away from being able to move forward. Cool. So Maureen says, is there an index tracker type fund portfolio in pensions problem in South Africa? How do I invest into an index tracker? Great. So absolutely, you can invest in index trackers in just about every single country in the world. Again, get the Wealth Chef book, go and look at some of the articles on my blog. But in South Africa, the two companies that I highly recommend, so you've got to have an online broker. So one is and let me just bring up here. So a great company, low-cost company where you can start in South Africa, .co.za. So the extraordinary woman, Narina Visser, who actually is the co-creator of the Savvy Investor Passive Investment Management Mastery School product with me, is one of the directors, and she is the investor of ETFSA. I get nothing from referring them. They are 100% exchange traded funds. An exchange traded fund is an index tracker fund. So if you go to etfsa.co.za, you can transfer your retirement annuities across and invest at 100% in what are also called passive funds. You can open a tax-free investment account. So that's utilizing your 33,000 Rand tax-free allowance a year in index trackers, and you can learn a whole bunch there. And if Sibs, if you're still here, would be great. I also have a great free webinar called Savvy Investor. So if you go to my website, you'll also see some freebies, some webinars and trainings to learn more about index trackers. You can go to the blog, type that in, and just start learning about these. But in all these mechanisms, so whether you're in from Canada, US, Trinidad and Tobago, South Africa, Germany, France, Australia, New Zealand, you can invest in what are called passive. So look at passive investments, index trackers, exchange traded funds. This is how you want your money working for you. And you can do it with all your tax deferred and protected mechanisms. Okie dokie, how are we doing? It's so cool to see so many of you still here and answering questions. Okay, so Tamara has said, what are the best ways to invest in gold and other commodities from South Africa? Okay, so when I'm talking about portfolio design, what is really important is by having different asset classes. So I said you want diversification across asset classes and geographic zones and currencies. This is how you spread your risk and allow these different assets to work for you. It's this good old saying, you don't want all your eggs in one basket. Many people only have one egg. Maybe they've only got a business or they've only got a job. That is risky. So you want multiple eggs and eggs of different kinds in different baskets. Now, one of the things in good portfolio design is having a percentage of your assets invested in gold. So what's super important to know is gold is not really an asset in the classic form, in that an asset, when I'm describing about it, is something that can grow in value, capital value, so its value grows, so a company gets bigger and stronger, and the share that you own in the company is now worth more. A property's value grows. Maybe the royalty portfolio of your music catalog that you have grows in value because it becomes more popular. So that's called the capital growth of an asset. The second part of an asset is the income it can generate. This is the rental income from the yield in rental property. This is dividends kicked off by shares when companies pay out their profits to shareholders. This is the coupon from what's called a loan instrument. So this is the liquidity, the income component. Now, gold does neither. It doesn't grow in value and it doesn't kick off income. So you might go, well, Anne, why would I want gold? So gold, and to a lesser extent, and still to be really validated, Bitcoin, not other altcoins, is what is called a chaos hedge. It tends to be a wealth preserver. So in big times of turmoil and shift, money tends to flow to gold as an agreed, solid, tangible base of value. And so you'll see now in big volatile times, the gold price will go up because more money is flowing to gold. So in whatever times, I always recommend you have up to 5% of your net worth sitting in gold as just a chaos hedge, as it zigs when everything else zags. And you could even look at increasing that up to 10%, but I wouldn't increase more than that. So how do you invest in it? Well, lo and behold, you can invest in it in an index tracker in the form of an exchange traded fund. I'm not talking about investing in gold mining companies. I'm talking about actually physical gold. So you can just type in Google in your country and go physical gold ETF, exchange traded fund, ETF, physical gold, and it will bring up a list. And in South Africa, I think the Absa Gold, actually, let me go back here. So from a South African perspective, again, if you go to ETFSA, they actually have a list of every single exchange traded funds available that you can invest in South Africa. And there you go. It also shows what's the total expense ratio. So that's the cost of that fund. So remember, we want to keep our costs down. So there is One Invest Gold, domestic, and Absa New Gold. So Absa New Gold is one of the biggest physical gold. You'll see it says GLD, gold. And if I click on here and show the fund fact sheet, it says it is one of the simplest and most cost-effective methods for investors to invest directly in actual gold. So it's a physical gold. These means actual bullion. Gold bars are invested in a bank vault. And so that is the most cost-effective and easiest way to own physical gold, is through a physical gold ETF. Okie dokie. Wow, how are we all doing? We're having a ball here. So Tembile says, I'm saving a deposit for a house, and it's currently in South African bank, in a South African bank notice account. What vehicle can I use for growth that guarantees the capital, especially because I'll need it in less than a year? So this is such a great question. And Tembile, any money that you're going to need within the next year, either to buy something, to pay for expenses, you want to just keep in a fixed deposit, as you've got in what's also called a term deposit, can also be called a certificate of deposit. So that is the only way to guarantee capital. Any investment into an asset, be it property, be it stocks and shares, for anything under than 3 years, the price of the capital is going to move, and that is super risky. So you also talk, the difference between saving and investing is really important. So we want to be doing both. We want to be building up a cash safety net and saving for the to be expected expenses we have coming down the line and plan for those. And then we want to invest separately. So you're doing really well. That's going to be your best thing that you can do. Look at getting what is the best term or rate you can get on a fixed deposit, knowing that you're going to need to get that money out. So that is great. Okay. Charlotte says, in the UK, our pensions are covered by FCA. So that's the financial services. You know, they protect that on the 85,000K protection scheme. So your pensions are protected to an extent, but not private pensions or companies, if companies have a provision. So there are a lot of different things in different countries that protect you. But this is also why I recommend you have diversification, and where I can, I prefer to have my own control. But there's never a 100% guarantee. Okay. Great. Sibs has shared with us the link to get to the roadmap to financial freedom. We'll tell you there's the 6 steps there, and there's also the Savvy Investor webinar. So Lynette says, Anne, would you recommend taking a bond out on a fully paid up house at low interest rates and invest in index trackers during this time? We have 2 properties that are renting, and rentals will furnish the bond. Great question. So really important to separate out what I call your home, the place that you live in, and that would be neutral borrowing against that. And then it may be an opportunity with interest rates going right down to see, you know, could you get access to low cost money that way in order to create asset invest? And then there's expansion debt. Now, generally with investment property, you want to be leveraged. You want to have borrowing against that asset. Why? Because in most countries, there is what's called mortgage relief. You can claim the interest against that of that investment against your income. So it can bring your income tax down. Now, yes, I know things have changed in the UK and mortgage relief is being removed, but everybody else there is. But also, Lynette, I really want you to get this. So here's about starting to be savvy and think about this. If you have got investment properties which are washing their face, which can pay for the interest on borrowing against it, by taking money out of an investment property in the form of leverage, so borrowing against it, 100% of that money that you get out of that investment is free of capital gains tax and free of income tax. I'm going to say that again because most people go, what are you saying, Anne? Because this is mind-blowing, and this is why I keep all of my investment properties leveraged, even if I've taken up what's called the loan to value ratio, so it's almost zero. I make sure that I have facilities and provisions that I can draw money out of investment properties, because if I had to earn that same amount of money, I would be taxed at a high tax rate, because if it was deemed income, I'm going to be taxed at that. And if I were to sell that property, I'm going to be taxed capital gains. I can take that money out and let the asset just pay for the cost of that money taken out. And that money, I've just basically got 40% more on it by being savvy. So Lynette, you can pay me for that juicy piece of advice by passing on the joy and helping others become financially savvy too. So I hope you really got that then you take that money not to feed off it, but now imagine you buy other assets and then those assets you feed off. And this is how you use expansion debt or leverage debt to accelerate. But please, everybody, only do that when you've got your foundations in place. We've got to make sure our basic money management and relationship is good before we start trying to do anything fancy. This is like, I'm not going to go and try and do leaps on a skateboard in a skateboard park when I don't know how to stand on that skateboard. Learn how to stand on it, be balanced, be steady before you start any advanced strategies. Cool. Okie dokie. So let's see. So Jill said, will there be a repay? Yes, I will be sending this out. Cool. Okay, Mdu says the link to ordering a book directly from Anne is not working. Wow. Okay, thanks for letting us know that, Mdu. I'm not sure whether Sips, whether you have responded to that. Check on that. I'm not sure what is happening with that. That is a bit worrying, but we will get that sorted. And so for any of you, if you want a book, if you're in South Africa, you can contact us. Also know that 100% of the royalties from the Wealth Chef book goes to the Small Enterprise Foundation, which helps pro-poor women start micro businesses so they can liberate themselves financially. And it's never been a more important time. So how cool that you know that, all of the royalties from the Wealth Chef book go there. So the wealthchefbook.com, let me see what is going on there. And so you can contact the Wealth Chef support at thewealthchef.com, and Sibongile will help you get sorted on that. So let's see. Okay, that link is a problem. So we'll quickly get onto that. Contact the Wealth Chef, support at thewealthchef.com, and we will get you sorted. Okie dokie. And you can get on Amazon and exclusive books. Brilliant. So let's see. Khatso said, which is recommended for investing purposes? Multi-level marketing versus ETFs. Okay, so please understand, multi-level marketing is not investing. That is called trying to run a business. And please be really, really, really clear. Investing is when you're buying and creating assets that will work for you. You also want to utilize your tax-free and your tax-deferred mechanisms. There are many kinds of businesses you can start. There are franchises, and multi-level marketing is one of them. Please do not get conned into MLM caged as an investment. There are many, many Ponzi schemes. There are many, many scams around, okay, recruit this and you'll get paid out. Please, please, please do not fall for those. There are some valid multi-level marketing businesses that are real businesses, but please understand, a real business is something that you have got to work your butt off after. You've got to create consistency. A real business that becomes an asset, which is something that can be sold, that can work without you, takes time, takes energy and input, but it is not investing. So great question to differentiate that. Karen says, do I leave my maturing RA investing locally or move it offshore in a retirement fund? Okay, so Karen, so just everybody, your tax deferred and tax protected allowances are only available within the country where you're tax domicile. But you may have been in a country where you had a pension or an ISA or a Roth, or in the US. You need to leave it in that country to still get the tax benefits from it. You cannot transfer a pension or a 401k from the US to the UK and still get the tax benefits from tax deferral, no income tax and no capital gains tax. The same whether you're in South Africa or elsewhere. You cannot move it to another domicile, but you can get involved in what is it invested in. And you can get, so what you can do is lighten the load, eliminate unnecessary costs, get it invested in more transparent mechanisms like index trackers, and get it out of prepackaged things that you can't see what it's invested in. But within South Africa, you are limited and restricted what is called Reg 28. And this is governance by the regulation in terms of it determines what pension providers can actually invest in. So let me just give you an example. So basically, Reg 28 in South Africa says what percentage of the money has to be invested in the domestic market, what can be invested in property, what can be invested globally. So some of it is invested globally. There is an allowance for that, but it is more heavily allocated to domestic equity. So you've just got to understand that implication of what you can and can't do. So you're also, this is why it's also really important you're investing outside of just your tax deferred mechanisms. You're also utilizing your tax-free investment allowance, because that has got more flexibility, and you could have that 100% invested offshore through international index trackers that you buy domestically, but they would still be invested. So in your tax-free investment account, you could be investing in the the S&P 500, the FTSE 100, the world developed markets, but through your domestic allowance on your own home market account. And this is how you get foreign exposure, very low cost, without all the complexity of offshore accounts. And you would actually be invested in dollars and pounds and euros. Okie dokie. Wow. I'm going to take 2 more questions, then we're going to call it a day. So if your company doesn't have a pension fund, how do you start one? Well, you can have a private pension, whether you're in Australia, South Africa, UK, US, you can have a private pension and get the same allowances. Remember, your allowance only comes off income. The good thing in South Africa, all income counts. So that's income that you might get from investment property. So it counts against 27% of your income you can put into a private pension. In South Africa, they'll be called a retirement annuity. And again, site like ETFSA, you could just open up an RA in index trackers, and you would get that tax refund back when you submit your annual tax return. In the UK, you would open a SIP, self-invested personal pension. Again, in the US, it would be a self-managed 401k or IRA. Same in Australia. So you can still have, it doesn't have to be through a company. It would just be what's called a personal pension, private pension, personal RA. So Geraldine says, my husband has inherited a house from his dad. We were in the process of having it transferred. Would you recommend that we take a loan out on the property to fund growing our assets in the next market surge? Geraldine, absolutely worth your while to see what you can get. As interest rates are coming right down, see what you can do. Everything in here is just see what's available and do your numbers. So first you want to determine, is there a market for that property? Could you rent it out? Would those rentals be able to cover the cost of the borrowing? So get savvy, treat it like a business. Go, what are the costs of that property? What is the demand? What income could we get for it? Could you divide it up? Could you turn it into a multi-let? What are the various things? What is the option that this Play-Doh gives you? I always treat property like Play-Doh. It's just, what are the different scenarios you can do? And then go, okay, this is the income we could generate. Then you can look at, okay, if we borrowed, what are the interest rates we'd be paying? So does the income generated by this property cover the cost of borrowing and its other costs? Great. So does that then make sense for you to extract it? Or would it be better to sell it or float it when things shift? The fact that you've only just inherited it means that you won't have big capital gains on it. And so do the numbers. Let the numbers drive you and direct you in making that call. Okay. Cool. Julia said, okay, she's spoken about physical gold. We've answered that question. Cool. Andrea said, would it be better to put extra money into a bond to pay it off quicker, or take the extra cash you have and invest in trackers? So Andrea, in low interest environments, you can get your money working harder for you. So I always want you to do the calculation and go, okay, if I'm paying, let's say 3% in interest, but I can get that money working at 8, 12, 15%, that asset that can then pay for that liability and you will have the money. So generally in low interest environments, it's not in your interest to pay off your home loan, your mortgages, your bonds faster. It is far better to get that money working, because now you've got assets that can pay that off for you. Great. So many of you are saying, Steve, thank you for the great webinar. Sharon, squeeze the juice is excellent. Maureen, absolutely get squeezing. What's fun we can have. Terry says, thank you, Anne, for such a great session. All your wisdom and care. I love you so. Terry and Jeff, so cool. Thank you from Geraldine and Jane and Lisa and Rachel. And I just want to thank all of you so much for being here this afternoon, choosing to liberate yourself, getting savvy with your money. And so take those steps, just really sort of dive in and really manage what you're doing here by taking responsibility for your own financial well-being, because so much of the stress and turmoil that we experience from uncertainty is feeling that we are out of control and that we're in limbo, which we're not. We're never out of control. We can take back our agency. We can bring back the locus of control to ourselves. So let's do that. Take these baby steps, and just so great to be here, and huge love to all of you. Wow, I'm just so loving seeing all of your thank yous from Brian and Karen. And remember, we are a community. This is that. You feed me, I feed you energetically. We're not meant to do this alone. Connect, share this with others. And this is how we thrive. This is how we take extraordinary, tumultuous times and use them as ways to really reclaim who we are, what is wealthy for us. And I am so excited for what we can do when we can emerge into the next iteration of life with hopefully a lot more consciousness, hopefully a lot more understanding of our relationship with consumption, our relationship with our spending, what we're doing, and with each other and community, and knowing that we're already so enough, that there is no car, no house, no income, no status that can define who we are. And what an amazing place that then from that point, we can go and express and explore our life, knowing that we're intrinsically worthy, because this one precious, amazing life is the life that we get to live. And so let's go and live that beautifully, doing that by sorting out this financial side so that money can support you and not enslave you. Bye-bye, everybody. Love you so much.